Okay. Yeah. Hey, Vav, I'm a base. Rabbi Shmuel. It's in the middle of the page, slightly under the middle of the page. So we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And this list of our learning, we should have this in Mikdash immediately. Learning Lula Nishma, Sava Golda Baspark, Binyamin, and Salas of Ben. And also for Shana Avin Ben Sarah. And Dali gets well, yes, but I think it's better. Okay. Mara says like this. Rav and Shmuel Damar Tavayo, Rav and Shmuel both say, Kur b'shleishim ani ma'ichalach. Yachalach sebe'afilu b'sachrena. So they set the price. They set a price that a kur, which is 30 sa, is going to be sold for shleishim sela, shleishim dinarim, for 30 something, 30 coins.
Just seller right next on the next slide.
Yeah. So it's a seller. It's a seller on the next line. So it's a seller. So for a seller, 30 seller. So what happens is that when they're measuring it out, even when they're up to the 29th one, so they're just about finished measuring it, he can already reach, both can retract. Sale's not complete. Now, before we said that sale would be complete if we're filling up the person's utensils. Once it's filled, then it's complete. We had like these discussions. So whose utensil is being used here? Hey. Good morning. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We'll see. So we're learning that that the measuring itself is going to affect the sale. This sort of contradicts what we learned before. So we learned before, once the price was established and the person takes it, he acquires it, right? If mashach v'lei madad, we said it was opinion. Let's see. Kur b'shleishim sub-seller. Let's say if he doesn't just say 30, 86p. If he doesn't say just the statement of one core is 30 sa, one core for 30, but rather he elaborates on that. He says one core for 30. Each sa, which is there's 30 of them in the core, each sa would be a seller. So then the halacha then is rishon kana. He acquires every sa that gets added in. He acquires that because that's considered like a full sale. Yeah. Let me see what the Rashbam says. Yeah, because what he's saying is hikbid b'mechira. Because he said he wanted to buy 30, so that sale is not finalized until he actually has 30. Yeah, the Rashbam says, what about that case before mashach v'lei madad, that you acquire it even before you measure it, once the price was set. Once you pull it, you already acquire it even if you didn't measure it. He says that's because you're selling an entire bundle. The thing is, you don't know how much is in it. You wanted to, so the measuring afterwards, what's in it, that was just for clarification purposes, but to tell him how much he got. But the price was already set. That was probably the case before was where he says, I want to buy this bundle. And it says, well, it's, $1 a pound. So he takes the whole bundle and then they measure it. So that measuring is just to see how much he bought. He knows he wanted to buy the whole bundle. Visually, he knew what he wanted, but the measuring doesn't affect the sale. Over here, he wants to have the specific measure, and until he's measured all of that, then that's the sale's not final. Thank you. Okay. Whose utensils was this going into? What was with the chart?
One person understood that the jar was one size, and the other person understood the jar was size.
Saying there's two types of jugs. There was a barrel and a jug in that case.
Here, it says large bundles, but large bundles could be one thing to one.
Yeah, but
Oh, that's not
we're
weird.
comparing. Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about is is that he said specifically the amount that he wanted. So until that was measured out, it can be tracked. Now, Toshima, come and listen. Ask a kasha on Rav and Shmuel. We learned in there that it was a Bryce or a Memra. There were four cases of sales. That says if one of them owned the measuring cup, whether the seller or the purchaser, right? So, Rishon Kana, as it's being poured in, he acquires it. If it would be the purchasers, the buyers, so every measuring cup that goes in, every bit that goes into that measuring cup belongs to the purchaser. We said if it doesn't belong to the purchaser, it's a borrowed cup from someone else, right? So then we said only when it's filled does it belong to the purchaser, because he lends it to the seller. And once it's filled, then it belongs to the buyer. Then he's lending it to the buyer. That's once it's filled. But if it belongs to the buyer, then as it's filling up, it's automatically going to the buyer. Problem is over here, it says even though it's not filled up. Now we said that you only acquire it when you have all 30 sa. And here we're saying that you're acquiring it even if it's not filled up. Even if it's not the 30 sa. Say the container held 30 sa. So it says that if the lekeach owns the measuring cup, then he's acquiring it even before it's filled up. It's a problem. My answer is going to Amalei told him, in Bishnei Maser Slaim, look Beselani Meichlach. Rav Kana Shnasa Sayibihin, Achnami Shnasa Sayibihin. Gives this interesting scenario where Rav Kana said in regarding someone that's bringing a sacrifice, and you have to bring together with it the flour, the oil, together with the sacrifice. So he said that the utensil in the temple had these grooves in it. Like today, a measuring cup has these lines in it that says how much. So on that utensil, it said that until here is what you need for a cow, until here is what you need for an ox, until here is what you need for a lamb. Right? So there were shnasais, it's called, like must be markings on it that tell you what it is. So here, what he's saying is the reason why Rishon Kana, why is this person acquiring as it's being filled up, is because on this measuring cup, it said lines for you, so that each line was an ounce, another pound, or whatever. So as it's filling up, he was getting the amount that he was acquiring. Now, the problem is like this. When it came to someone else owning the utensil, he said he only acquires it when it's filled up to the top, right? If it's not owned by the seller, by the buyer doesn't own the utensil. It was a borrowed utensil. Then we say he only acquires it when it's filled to the top. Now we're saying when it's owned by the purchaser, by the buyer, he's acquiring it even before it's filled up to the top. Now, why is he acquiring it before it's filled up to the top? He made up he wants a certain amount. And until the last drop, they can retract. We said, well, it's because there are lines on it that are saying markings that say that okay, now he has this amount, now he has that amount. At each marking, he's acquiring for that mark. The problem is, why didn't we say that at each marking he's acquiring it when it belongs to a borrow when they're borrowing it? At each marking, he should acquire it of it. Why over there does it have to be filled to the top? And over here it only has to be filled to each step. Rashbam answers this question. And he says that it's let's see exactly his expression. He says, "Dal menas kain shalua shneim zel medid v'zel lekachta mishetismale leshavcha bekela v'bershusay." Because the way they borrowed it was with the intention to fill it up entirely, and that switch of ownership from the seller borrowing it to the buyer borrowing it, the utensil, is only when it's filled to the top. Yeah, that was their understanding when they borrowed it. So it only becomes the buyer's utensil as a borrowed utensil once it's filled to the top. Toshima, come and listen. I'm sorry, I didn't finish. Also over here, there were these grooves in the measuring cup that say each marking, each level of the amount. Okay, Tashma, a seicher, a sapayal. Someone hires a worker, to do work for him when it comes the season of the granary, which is in the summer. Yeah. It says here winter. He hires him in the winter or spring to do work for him in the summer. Read the drop further, see if that's if I'm correct.
So work for him in the harvest.
The harvest would be
In the summer.
I think it's in the summer.
Summer and fall.
So he's hiring him now to do work later. Now what he wants to pay him is hayayim b'dinar. He's going to pay him now. He's going to take a dinar per day. A dinar is like a quarter, as opposed to $1. Which let's compare that to a sela. Sela would be $1. A dinar would be a quarter. I don't know if that's the buying power, but that's the ratio. So yeah. So Vilagairan Yafasela, but actually his labor at the time of the granary in the summer is going to be worth the sela, which is a full $1. So the guy's letting himself be hired cheap because he's getting the money in advance. So asalihanis mimani, you can't have benefits from this. Now let's just spell it out. What's going on over here is that when it comes time for him to do the work, he's paying. It looks like he's borrowing money and paying back at a higher rate because the money was given to him in advance. He's actually giving back 4 times the amount. And he can use the money meanwhile. Because that's interest. Interest is you take, because of the time that you have to pay back, you pay back more. Money's advanced. He's paying back in labor. It's not paying back in the money, but he's actually paying back more than what he borrowed. So that's prohibited. What's wrong? Tell me.
How do we know he's paying back more and not the right amount in labor?
Well, you see the top words, at the time of the granary, yafasela. His labor is worth a sela. But
Okay.
hayai before in the two line on the last page. Hayayim bedinar. He's paying him now for just the dinar.
There's
per
more
day.
demand, there's more demand for his labor at the harvest time than now, so he could charge more.
Right.
Wow.
He's not working now.
Yeah, I get that.
He'll be working later. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. It's an interesting piece. We'll see. The Gemara is going to elaborate a drop on this.
Is he getting?
He's getting paid at the beginning. He's getting the benefit of the money, but the other guy is getting the benefit of getting cheap labor, just paying in advance. Aval imscharei mehayim bedinar liyim let's say he hires him now. He hires him now to start working already now, and he's telling him, "I'm paying you a dinar a day." Now today, that's what it's worth. But he's locking in at that rate that even when it comes to time for the granary, it's still going to be a dinar. He says that's acceptable. That's not a problem, even though he's getting paid. Maybe he's getting paid all in advance, right? Maybe he's getting paid in advance, and that's why he's agreeing to this rate. But nevertheless, that's acceptable. If it enters your mind to say, we're going back on Kasha and Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel said, Rav and Shmuel said like this, that if the person says, I'm buying 30 kor for a seller, then you can retract at any time because the sale's not finalized till you get all 30 kor. Even if you have 29 already, sale's not done. But if you say 30 kor for a seller, 30 kor for 30. I'm sorry, a kor for 30. That's what it is. Kor is 30. So a kor for 30. So then that sale would not be done until he gets all 30. All 30 sa, that is. But if he says a kor for 30, each sa for a seller, that is itemizing each sa for a seller. If he does that, then every sa that he gets, he acquires it. That's what Rav and Shmuel said. If that's the case, then what we're going to do now is we're going to look at each day in this laborer's life. And we're going to say that, okay, today he got, because he said a dinar a day, so today passed, he got a dinar. That's the done deal. Another day passed, he got a dinar. When it comes time for the summer, and he's getting he's getting paid a dinar, but he's paying, but the labor is worth 4 dinar, so that's its own arrangement. Because according to Rav and Shmuel, if you itemize it, then every day becomes a separate transaction. So then, what's the difference if he says I'm working today for a dinar, or if he says I'm working in the summer for a dinar? So when I work today for a dinar, when today is done, then it's all over. Because Rishon Kana, every step is a complete transaction. So then all I'm looking now at is the summer independently. Look at it in the summer independently, and we're back to the problem. Why is it permissible?
There's more work to do in the summer.
And he's giving back extra in the summer. You see, if you don't say this, if you say that it's all one big bundle, then you say, okay, that's the price that he's giving for the whole thing. But if you say that that it gets itemized and each one is a different transaction, then in the summer, the money that he got earlier in the winter or the spring for the labor that he's doing in the summer, he's paying back extra in the summer. He's giving more labor than for his work.
I would imagine like hourly pay, depending on like a seasonal business, like in the summertime when maybe more people buy ice cream or something, like they get the same salary as the
Right.
So,
You'll see in a second why it's. The Gemara says, the Gemara elaborates on this a little bit. It says, "Visal kedaitach kor b'shleishim sela, kor b'shleishim sa, kor b'shleishim." I have to put a comma there. Sa b'sela ani meichalav. Each sa is a seller. That's what I'm selling to you. Rishon kan. If we say that he acquires each one, hachinami here too. Kama. Nifsak pasak, vasalanismena. And each day is divided up into individual days, and you shouldn't be allowed to have benefit from when it comes to the summer pay. And then the Gemara just says it again. If he says a dinar per day, and at the time of the harvest, the time of the granary, it's actually worth a sela, which is 4 dinarim, then why is it permissible? He's paying back extra because he had money in advance. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we want to say. That is one package. But because Rav and Shmuel are dividing it up, because when something gets itemized, it's divided up. Turns out it's not really one package.
Always, because he might do like the labor cheaper during the harvest time because he's getting work now, and otherwise he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's really what the Gemara is saying. But we're asking a question on it, that since it's itemized, as we see when it comes to a sale.
Things usually are priced different. Usually, when you buy more of a certain type, they'll give you cheaper.
Yeah, but if you itemize it, so each one is getting separated.
Yeah, but it would be like a higher price. Like mine would be 59 cents, but you could get like 10 for
Cheaper, right? Cheaper by the dozen.
It sounds like it's all in the way that they phrase the agreement.
Right.
I mean, if you walk in and say, I'll pay $5 for a half gallon of milk, or I'll pay $5 for 64 ounces of milk. The second way makes it sound like you're interested ounce by ounce. So if he comes up with 62 ounces instead of 64, it sounds like you have to pay.
Right.
Yeah, for example, like an hourly worker has some hours that are has more work to do than others, but at the end they can balance it out. If you get paid $10 an hour, they can balance it out. That's what I think.
Right. Yeah, take a look. Let's see. Rava is going to explain this to us. Summer Rava says, what you're saying is that a person cannot charge less for labor. And that's totally not true. A person that needs the money and needs the work is perfectly allowed to say that I need the money and I'm willing to work for less.
That would think of exploitation. Migrant comes in, he needs to work, so you pay him $1 an hour where everybody else gets $10.
But the explanation of it, he's allowed to do that. He's allowed to work for less.
Yeah.
We can't tell him that, no, you're giving interest because you're paying back more in labor than what you're being paid now. That's totally not a problem. Person's allowed to say that I'm willing to work for less because I want to work. So what's that? So then what is the problem here in the other case? He says, so if that's the case, so why do you say that it was prohibited in the first case to say that I'm going to work for a dinar in the summer? It says, Reisha, the like covered bahade mehashta mechsik yaganatli. It just appears to be interest because you're not doing work now and you're just getting all the money in advance, and then you're going to start work later. So because you're getting the money in advance and you're only working later, so that appears to be a problem. Sefer the covered bahade mehashta, but in the sefer where you're starting to work now, then it doesn't look like you're getting any interest here. This is just the rate that you decided to go for because you needed the work. You needed the money now already. Yeah. Yeah, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
The whole thing is about
Don't they get rich and poor from the Bikurim?
From
With the
Bikurim.
baskets.
Yeah, and that's right. That's Shalom says that we proved that's proven from the baskets by Bikurim, this week's parsha. Remember the rich get the basket back.
It's only Masachet Bikurim and Bikurim.
Yeah, which is Mishnayos.
Oh, it's just Mishnah.
Very good. Okay. Let's see. Next Gemara. We're talking about now buying flax that's growing, that's going to be used for probably making linen or something. I don't think they ate the flax seeds back then. Now it's just a modern thing in health food shops. Flax seeds. It was for linen. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, there's health benefits to everything, but there's a cost for each of those things. I think someone told me that they wanted to make potato peel chips. They were just the potato peels, you take off the peels. So then they found out that because they say potato peels are healthy, right? If you eat the peel, it's turns out that there's actually a little poison in the potato peel, and if you eat it together with the potato, it's fine. But just to have the peels themselves is actually too much of it, and concentrated. It's too much. You can't do that. So yeah, everything has. They claim that the flax seeds also. It's too much something in it. It's not really healthy. I don't know. Okay, so we're talking about a person who's buying this flax. If it's attached to the ground, but he removes some of it, then he acquires it. Kumar says, "Mishum detalash kol shu kana." What's going on? You remove some of it, you acquire all of it. How does that work? So Rav Sheshes explains, Lech yefelach karka kolshu ukni kol mashela. He's telling him like this. He's saying, if you can clear up a little bit of the field by removing some of it, in that little area you'll be able to plant. So that's a way of making a chazaka in the land, and you'll acquire it on the land. So just remove some of the flax. The land will be acquired to you, a small piece of land, and you'll acquire it together with the land. Okay. We have a new Mishnah. Someone sells wine or oil to his friend, we're going to find out who owns the things and all of that, all the, how he's measuring it, and it's all, everything is relevant. But the price goes up or the price goes down. Sorry. Yeah. It acquires all the rest by lifting up some of it, by removing some of it. How does he acquire the rest? Because he's cleared a little bit of the land, and that's considered a chazaka in the land, and now he's able to acquire it together with land.
But just the land.
Yeah. Okay.
This looks like it belongs in common.
Yeah, that belongs in Bab Metzia, right? In the middle of Bab Metzia, we had the interest clause. Yeah. But here it's this Baba Basra, this section of Baba Basra is about purchasing and what comes along with what you purchase. Like when's the sale final and all of that. That's this section. And then after this section comes the next new topic is inheritance. We have a big chapter on inheritance. Yeah, complicated. So if the price changes before the measurement is filled, then the seller can retract. Say I didn't finish measuring it out, and now I'm changing the price. But once the measurement is full, then if the price changes, it's lekeach. Then it already belongs to the buyer. He's already finished purchasing it. I said before that once it's filled. Now we said from what we understood before, is that only if the utensil that's being used for measurement doesn't belong to either the buyer or the seller. That's only if it belongs to a borrow, that it's being borrowed. Then we say that it's being lent to the seller until it's full, and it's lent to the borrower. It switches right when it's filled. It goes to the borrower, and then he acquires it because it's filled. So the Gemara is going to explain that, but right here it doesn't spell it out. If there was a broker, sarser is a broker. Nishbra chavis, nishbra l'sarser. Let's say the barrel breaks. That's the broker's.
Broker's barrel broke. The broker's barrel broke.
The broker's barrel broke. Yeah. Peter Piper.
Yeah.
But what we're saying here is that the loss of the contents is the loss of the broker. It's his loss because he was the one that was actually doing the transfer. He was taking it and selling it. So because he's standing there doing this transfer, so he takes the loss at the breaks at that moment.
He takes the gain, twice broke.
Yeah. Something like that, but it's worse than a paid watchman because he's actually buying it, he's reselling it. Now, I think what this means is that when a person buys, like, I want that barrel, I want that the contents of that barrel, and you're pouring it into your own barrel, you're emptying it out into your barrel. So when it's empty, you can still get, like in Russia, they would say, in every bottle of vodka, there's another 40 drops. You know, they squeeze out the drip. So there's here we say that you have to let it drip 3 more drops after it's empty, because those drops belong to the buyer. He bought the contents of that, so you have to let it drip three more drops. Yeah. Yeah, my friend told me his grandfather had a cookie company. It was a Hasidic guy, a Satmar, and they used to sell cookies like in a bag, and it had like they would put it on the scale, the weight or something, and they would add the cookies in until the scale said. But so he said after it reached the weight, he would add in another 3 cookies. He said, "I'm not coming back to this world for a cookie, you know, because it says if you." You steal from someone, so you have to come back again to pay it. So I'm not coming back for a cookie. So okay, Herkina umeitzis or meicher. However, if he puts it on the side, even after it's been emptied, and you did the 3 drops, now you put it on the side, and then you start to see the contents, that little residual content is collecting on the bottom. They say, hey, this was bought by the buyer, the purchaser. No. Once you did the 3 drops, that belongs to the seller. You don't go back and look in the barrel afterwards and see, like, you know, it started to collect more. That you can keep that. If it's a storekeeper, he doesn't have to do this because he's in a rush. He doesn't have time for every customer to let it drip 3 more drops. You buy it quick. You come and you go. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Erev Shabbos in Koshecha Pater, that on Erev Shabbos he doesn't have to. On Erev Shabbos he's exempt. Yeah, he doesn't have to do it. The Gemara is going to ask: is it talking about the storekeepers or talking about every person? The Gemara is going to ask who's Rabbi Yehuda. Is it Rabbi Yehuda being strict on the storekeeper that normally you do, and it's just on Erev Shabbos you don't? Or is he being lenient on everyone else? That on Erev Shabbos you don't have to when you usually do. It's unclear. The Gemara will explain. Okay. The Gemara starts off with something that we mentioned when we were learning the Mishnah. It says, Hamida Deman, who owns the measuring cup? You said that until it's filled, it belongs to it's the seller's gain or the seller's loss, right? The price goes up or down, and after it's filled, then it's the purchaser's gain or loss if the price changes, if the value changes. But who owns the measuring cup? If you say the measuring cup belongs to the purchaser, what are you telling me? That until it's filled up, belongs to the seller, but you're pouring it into the utensil of the purchaser. And you told me that if it's in the utensil of the purchaser, Rishon Kana, that you acquire it step by step. Every we said that there were grooves in it, but you're acquiring it even before it's filled up. So why is it still the seller's? Ella must be Mida the Meicher, must be that we're talking about the utensil of the sellers. But you said when it's filled up, it belongs to the purchaser, Mida the Meicher, but it's in the utensil of the seller. It can't belong to the purchaser. He didn't transfer it over into his utensil. Rabbi Loi answers, B'mida sarser. We're talking about that it's the broker's utensil. Okay, we're not done yet. B'midik tani seifa, but if you read further in the Mishnah, it says B'maya sarser b'neim that if
Is
there was
it
a broker,
sarsor?
you tell me.
Is it's sarsur with the
Sarsur.
shuruk?
Sarsur.
Just yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I never did business in Israel. I just spent money. Speaking of spending money in Israel, we're discussing maybe a Israel trip for when we finish the daf. We're finishing Simchas Torah next year. We'll be finishing Shas. So on Simchas Torah, because we started Zvachim Daf Lamed, and we hope to be Zvachim Daf Lamed at Simchas Torah. So maybe right after that, that'll be our siyum. Maybe right after that, we can go for a few days to Israel. We're talking about it right after Simchas Torah. We'll go just the men, a guy's trip. Plan it right. Okay.
And
Moshe,
shalom.
You'll help us. And shalom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I love.
B'mida sarsur. It's talking about the measuring cup of the broker. It says 1 second, b'mida tani seifa, but later on in the Mishnah it says v'maya sarsur b'neiam nishbra chavis nishbra l'sarsur b'chlal dereisha la b'sarsur skin. The Gemara, the Mishnah added in a new case, and it said that all of this was without a broker. If there was a broker, then the loss goes to, if it breaks, then the loss is the broker's loss. Now, 1 second. We just put a broker back into the beginning of the Mishnah. So if the broker is introduced at the end of the Mishnah, so how do you have the broker at the beginning of the Mishnah saying that it was his utensil? The Gemara answers, Reisha mida b'loy sarsar, seifa b'sarsar atzmai. The broker wasn't there in the Reisha. It was just using his utensil. We borrowed his utensil, and the way it works when you borrow the utensil from a broker is that it belongs to the seller. The seller is borrowing it until it's filled, and then it's automatically transferred to being borrowed by the purchaser. Yeah, just like this is the third party. In the Seifa, in the second part of the Mishnah, we introduced that the broker is actually standing there and he's transferring it from this one to that one. Yeah, and when in real estate, the broker just takes a fee. He doesn't actually buy anything. That would be a totally different business.
It has it here kind of like a minimum. I don't think could be also a broker, but different.
But the reason why
this is one that he acquires the thing.
he is a client.
Yeah, it's different. It sounds more like a wholesale
Right.
type person.
Right. Once you lean it on the side, it collects the residual oil or wine that's in the barrel. So it belongs to the seller. Isalak Rabbi Lazar, when Rabbi Lazar went up to Eretz Yisrael, this is interesting, because Rabbi Lazar was apparently a student of Rav. Yeah, anyone remember we had that Rabbi Lazar, I think he was a student of Rav in Bavel, and then he went to Eretz Yisrael. We had it like not too long ago. And I don't know if I'll be able to find it unless I wrote on it, marked it down. Anyway, whatever the case is, Rabbi Lazar goes to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechei leZeiri. He finds Zeiri. Amalei mikantana de snai Rav Midas. Is there anyone here that learned Midas together with the measurements of sales? Did Rav learn with anyone Midas? That's because Rav was in Eretz Yisrael when he was younger. I guess that's what. Unless is he asking for someone that was there when Rav was in Eretz Yisrael by Rebbe, or is he asking that came from Babel also? Anyway, Achvei Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi. They showed him the Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Says Rabbi Yitzchak. Sounds like he comes from Baba. Amalei Micah Kashala says, what's the question do you have? The Tanan that was taught in the Mishnah, that if you lay it on its side and it starts to collect the residual oil, that it belongs to the seller. But we have another Mishnah that says that if someone is separating truma and there's 100 barrels, he has to give 2 of those to truma, right? 2%. And then you put the barrel on the side, the truma one. It's considered truma. Goes to the kohen. But you said that it's only the contents of it and not the residual. The residual stays by the seller. So why by truma does it go to the kohen, and on a regular sale we say that it stays by the seller? Amalei. So he responded, but we have a statement on that. The reason why we say it belongs to the seller is because the purchaser just gives up on that. It's such a drop left, you can keep it. Not because it doesn't really belong to him. Really, it does belong to him. But he just says, I don't have the time to wait for it, or it's fine, it's no problem. But if it's truma, then there's no yish over there. The truma becomes sanctified, and you can't just say, oh, don't worry about it. It actually becomes truma. So truma has to go. But if it's a sale, you can say that, okay, he forgives them. The storekeeper doesn't have to let the drip out, the last 3 drops. Rabbi Yehuda says on Erev Shabbos he doesn't have to let it drip out. The Gemara has a question. Rabbi Yehuda Aresha Koyu Lakula. Is Rabbi Yehuda referring to the Resha that normally a regular person that sells always has to let it drip out? And he's saying that on Erev Shabbos you don't have to do that. Or maybe he's talking about the storekeeper. The storekeeper, the Tanna Kama holds, never has to do that. In Ul Chumrah. And he's saying, no, he always has to, except on Erev Shabbos, he doesn't have to. Storekeeper has to be more patient. And so let's take a look. Tashma, come and listen. We have a brisa that spells it out. You see, sometimes the Mishnayos were not so elaborate, and the brises elaborated a little more. So the brises can give us some shed light on what the Mishnah meant. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Imer Erev Shabbos im chashecha chen b'ni pater b'nei shechen b'ni tared. On Erev Shabbos, before it's getting dark, the storekeeper is exempt from those last 3 drops because the storekeeper is busy. So he's exempt from doing that, and he just whatever fills up right away, that's what he sells, and the rest of it. Okay, let's leave the Mishnah for Sunday. Okay. Everyone, have a good Shabbos.